as an XML with a schema that would allow it to be like right on compatible with the facility element in care services discovery. So it's not rocket science because there's only a few properties that the Fred kind of demands, and they're totally compatible with the ones that CSD requires. Now CSD, I think, Derek, you've relaxed since our first conversation, like almost a month and a half ago or more, some of the required things. But when they are present in the facility registry, they would be exposed in a way that's compatible with CSD. So, I mean, again, it's not very complex, but I think that we have to have this, the schema nicely defined and approved. And what we'll do is, as soon as, even if we get just like a moderate, yeah, let's do this today, I think that we should look at implementing it in the code so that Carl can start using it in his prototyping efforts and discover early on if there's any kind of inconsistencies or discrepancies, because he's doing all the XSLTs and stuffs to transform the input of a facility registry and remerge it back in the XML database when queried with other data. So this will at least give him the ability to get started with something, even if we're not officially voting it into the API yet. I wanted to show it for you, make sure that we have any feedback, and try to give it to him before the public period of comments closes.
So does this, Ed, mean that using this schema, that the resource mapper exposes something that looks like a CSD directory, and that Carl's CSD manager can now fetch it? Because it's a CSD manager that's got that. I'm not sure. I think it's ExistDB. I think he's got two of them, ExistDB and Zorba.
Mm-hmm. So it's the manager that has that cache in the XML database, and it will reach out to the facility registry, and the facility registry just would have a simple list of facilities with these elements in it, and it would provide the information that the CSD manager needs in order to put into their database. And then whenever the CSD manager gets the next query saying, give me this with all facilities and stuff, they would get it from their own internal cache, right? And
so
but this would allow the facility registry to be that provider of that facility.
Is this XSD different in any way from the one for care services discovery?
Yes. Yes. It should be a pure superset. Sorry, it might have some fields that the care services discovery does not care about, right? But because there's some metadata that all API consumers so far have said would be really useful, but the CSD manager can ignore that. But then the things that CSD needs are in here, right? So that is the question. Of the things that CSD needs, all of them are represented here. And of all the things that CSD is optional, there is a way to optionally represent it here. And but there's things that CSD might not find a use for that are also presented in the API because other clients have said that they needed to have as well.
So is this designed to do anything more than expose? Is this XSD designed to do anything more than be a CSD directory? Because if it's not designed to do anything more than that, why wouldn't you use the CSD's schema?
It is no. The XML of this is supposed to be a directory of facilities that is compatible with CSD's needs, but in the course of our efforts so far, we have seen that people have additional piece of information they need out of a directory query. So this also supports that. So this at least is compatible with CSD, but in addition provides information that is useful to others outside of the scenario of CSD. So for example, this provides the same sort of information that a ComCare application might find useful, which has, might be above and beyond what a CSD manager might find useful, just as an example of an instance. So maybe if I let me stop the screen share and do a little bit of drawing here. Oops. Hold on one second. Sharpie in hand. So you have this CSD manager querying CSD directory, correct? And this is the manager, the big box, and the CSD directory is anything that can play that role of a CSD directory, right? Inside this information, CSD demands some information, but here we have this. So when CSD does a query, they'll get an XML that might have a couple of extra elements above and beyond that of the, that the CSD manager is required to expose. But there's and they might just ignore that.
So, yeah, and that's fine because there's any capability in the schema. But what I was asking was, is that a schema that lets you go to a connectathon? Because it's not the manager's job to figure out what a directory is sending it. It's the directory's job to expose a schema that is conformant with the CSD spec.
Yes,
that's why I was asking.
So yeah, when you get an XML element, it might have other things in there, but the first step of the manager. So the manager has a schema that says, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the apple, banana, and the orange in this document. If it comes with a pear or a pineapple, the XML processor will just focus on the apple, the banana, and whatever my other example was, and ignore the rest. So yes, from the perspective of the CSD manager, this looks like a CSD directory. And this is what we wanted to validate with Carl.
Are the names the same and the types the same?
Hmm?
Are the names and types the same?
No, but Carl told us that he didn't need or require that. That basically he was going to be doing part of the mapping in an XSLT internally. So we suggested doing it exactly the same as a starting point, but then he said, like, no, let's just start with something, and then we will get it as close as possible. So
okay, because what he can do is if he writes an XSLT, then that XSLT, if it's on your side instead of his side, means that Resource Mapper could be at a connectathon. But unless it's conformant with the spec,
yeah.
It's what we're looking for is how we're going to do this in January.
Yeah. So no, I understand. Yeah. And the first step was, it's a pity he isn't here. We're going to be following with him later on after this call. But the whole idea was to get to the point where it says CSD directory, right?
Right.
Property that the manager can get to, right? And the first step was to make sure that at least some of the data elements are there and aligned. And right now he does have that XSLT, so he was like, let's make sure we get the hello world going, and after that, make sure that we just finish doing things here and there, just so that the XML endpoint is a directory proper. Make sense?
Perfect. It does, okay. And actually that's as soon as we've got that, we're ready for the connectathon. Because that's all the connect. You don't have to play every actor at the connectathon. You just have to say which one you're playing.
Yep. So I wanted to show this, and the URLs are there in the chat, and you can see it under Facility Registry, Fred API, facility1.xsd, and .xml for an example. And if you have any feedback, we have the issues, right? I think it's issue number 60-something. Actually. Okay. Scott, do you remember by heart which one? Here it is. The 62, where we have the first issue that we're going to close, and then as soon as we're done with that one, once we test that it works as a CSD profile, we will close this one, okay? As a CSD directory, we will close this one. And when I'm saying this one is 62, sorry, on 63, I thought I was sharing my screen. So I'm going to paste them here in the chat link so that you can enjoy reading if you're into these things. And thank you everybody else for joining. And maybe it would be great to get an update of where the Tanzania thing is technically. Probably they're not interested in tours and things like that. But I don't know. Do you think, Michael, that it would be okay to share, like show the data dictionary of Tanzania for people to see? I think we did that last time, though, didn't we?
It is. And all of those go into IHE, and then there's a meeting in Chicago at the end of the month, at the end of July, and all of the comments are dispositioned, or if they cannot be dispositioned, like that's the last gate. If comments come in that can't be dispositioned, then it doesn't go into trial period. But the entire time that something's in trial period, it is that it's trial period. So it's not that this is the train leaving the station or anything. I mean, the purpose of the public comment is that you don't even put something into trial that isn't ready to be trialed. And then the purpose of trial is to say it doesn't actually become part of the IHE's IT infrastructure until it's been in use for a while and it's had its bugs shaken out of it. And so that remains, the change proposals can go on things in trial. Some products are in trial for 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
Thanks for that.
Oh, pause. Pause. Scott, one question. Do you want me to show the data dictionary for Tanzania as a backdrop to your lovely narrative? Maybe it makes it more tangible. Okay. All right. All right. What's up? All right. That explains the silence. Yeah, so we can go through this rapidly because obviously Jorge, I think, knows a lot about this, and Derek, you might be interested, but Right. And there's new modules that have the sort of things that Tanzania needed, like the loon identifier schemas and things like that, which are additional data validation rules and things like that. That it's transparent to the API users, but it's not transparent when you're trying to validate data inputs and things like that. So and validated input, I mean by through the service, right? Not necessarily just the text box sort of thing. So yeah, this is it. And as you see, there's a lot of things. It was really interesting to see, and I think from the Tanzanian perspective, what a workflow they have around the status of the facility information, in which it's facility data is to be used as official master facility data, even in the presence of curation flags that says I'm still a bit iffy about some of this information, right? So it's interesting how they have these like metadata fields at the bottom, where they even have like the approval date and so on, and they basically have all these kind of statuses, which is the facility is open, but there's a request to close it, and sort of a situation. And I think the thinking was more advanced around those workflows than what we've seen in Rwanda and other places. But it's all good. I mean, it means that there's users paying attention to what they need to do in order to maintain the data as a trustworthy data set, while at the same time accepting inputs pragmatically from places that might have not gone through a level of scrutiny, validation, or QA that they might have. And you want the best of both worlds in that sense. So this is Tanzania, and I don't know. There's one thing that we should start discussing today. I want to use the fact that Martin is on the line, which is the partial updates, but maybe that. I mean, there's a technical column. We'll have to go into a couple of those things, but I don't know. I wanted to ask before we started going through any of those issues. Was there any other topic you wanted for today's agenda before we jump into that? All right, don't jump all at once. All right, so I'm sharing my screen here. There were a couple of issues that we wanted to have a discussion on. I mean, given the Hangout participation, we'll obviously also send out the email. But the partial updates requirements is rearing its head again. And we knew it would happen, but we had postponed it from 1.0 into a future version. Partial updates are essentially a mechanism by which any external application or user interface can update only one of the fields, can update a facility only knowing one of the fields without having to have knowledge of all the other ones. It's a very simple thing that many REST APIs have, and we're talking about like doing a partial updates of one entity at a time, not like in a batch. So we're going to be reactivating this issue essentially, especially because it's needed in Rwanda, where some of the tools might be contributing pieces of information to the facility registry, and the Ministry of Health is vetting that as a good source. So they're getting permission to update it. But of course, if the facility registry has 10 pieces of information, but the tool only has one field, they should only need to update that one field, right? So I don't know if you don't mind looking at issue 35. Derek, I think your questions are always very cunning. They're never stupid.
No, I'm really nervous about this one.
I'm not.
So, so when you were showing the Tanzanian data model, it
Okay.
looked it looked like a tool that was used to build forms. Is it a form builder that maps to a data model, or is the data model for Tanzania going to be different from the FRED data model?
It is
Or
a
is it
data
different from
model.
is there a single underlying data model and different UIs, or does the UI build the data model?
Not there. What you were looking at, it looked like a form designer, but it was a data model designer, right?
So is Tanzania's data model different from Rwanda's?
In some aspects, yes. I mean, there's a core subset that is shared, right? But there's a superset that each country cares about, like Tanzania. They share a big chunk of it, but Tanzania doesn't care about some fields that Rwanda tracks, and Rwanda has way less fields than what Tanzania tracks. So in general, there's a core set of elements that is shared, right? So let me put it this way, and that is exactly the same. And then there is oh shoot, I'm screen sharing. Hold on. Always in the wrong one of this thing. It should allow you to do both at the same time. There you go. So basically, if you compare Rwanda and Tanzania side by side, you'll see that Rwanda and Tanzania have a part of the schema that is exactly the same, right? Then there is some fields that Rwanda have that Tanzania has with a little bit more kind of fields around them, right? But you could still think it's a kind of like the same family of information, but with more information in Tanzania. And then there's a superset of things that Tanzania tracks that Rwanda is not tracking. There's also like some, I would say, kind of a couple of fields that Rwanda tracks that Tanzania doesn't track, but it's just some things. So what you do there is you define your data model, how that data model gets expressed in forms, and what are the kind of like user interface kind of like things around that form, like, ComCare displays a form around it, the Facility Registry Resource Map client defines a form around it. It's up to the user interface of those different client applications to look at that data model information and render appropriately all the UI elements if they want, and to implement as many of the data validation rules as they want. But if they don't implement any data validation rules, or they don't have a very usable form, and the user submits crap data, the service will say, you're not conforming to my data model.
So if I had an application that worked in Rwanda, that application wouldn't work in Tanzania unless I modified it for the Tanzanian data schema.
No. It would work exactly on both, unless the specific workings of that application depended on a specific field that is coded in one country and not the other. For example, if I wanted to do a density of maps of, I don't know, motorbikes and bicycles, right, relative to the distance from roads, and in one of the countries they're not tracking the number of cars and motorcycles, then yes, that application would just say, I have no data to show, right? But the application itself would work. It would be interoperable. It would be able to make the calls and interpret back. It wouldn't just have that semantic piece of information to do its job, right?
So the names of them are all the same. So it's an application that runs in one runs in another.
Yeah, and if you're interested in, and this is something that we were actually discussing with Jorge, is we also want to help some level of semantic interoperability, right? So fields can be coded. So for example, if you're using a specific, let's say just as a scenario that is made up, but it's reflective of things that happen in patient information all the time. Let's say that ISO comes up with I don't know, not ISO. Let's say that.
Well, let's use a facility registry example.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's say that ISO comes up with a standard for a coding of transport variables, right? Which is like CCC is the number of cars and BBB is a code for your number of bicycles, right? And they're saying, the same way that, I don't know, a LOINC code might identify a specific sort of field, right? Then in the tool, you would say this field is coded as CCC, and then any application that semantically wants to do a computation on the number of cars can say, do you have the CCC field, which is the ISO number of cars field, and I would be able to do that computation. If it's not there, it's not there. Like if some guy decides to do a census for the number of cars and he just calls it the number of cars field, doesn't code it as CCC, right? You don't have that semantic variability. But if they do code it as CCC, then you say like, I know what to do. This is number of cars, and the application can adjust. But the API shape is the same, and the client would work the same. If you stay yourself within the subset of information that is core facility data, the applications will always be interoperable. So simple things such as, for example, give me all the facilities within this bounding box and do a computation of which ones, let's say, are more than 3 miles from the road network. That, an application that does that sort of analytics with GIS information should be able to work regardless of country, because position is there regardless of regardless of the implementation, and the name of the facility is there regardless of the place of implementation. But if you go into the deeper field, like number of bicycles, obviously you wouldn't match. Does that answer the question?
I think you've answered it better than I understand it, but yes, I think that you have answered it, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah. No, but that's super important.
I apologize that I have to step away. My contractor's knocking on my door, and they need to know something from me before they can keep going. So I'll be back in 1 minute.
Oh, sure, go ahead. In the meantime, we'll go back to the partial update. Martin, do you mind looking through this one and proposing a specific, we postponed it from 1.1, but proposing a single entity partial update, and that will allow the Rwandan scenario to submit some fields back in. One of the discussions was whether this should be a post versus a patch verb. I think puts tend to be a typical a way to do it, but I'll let you do the research if you don't mind and suggest something, and maybe you can comment on this issue thread with a specific proposal so that the Rwandan team can do it. I know that we support partial updates in the native resource map API. Hold on a second. Where are you? Here you are. Sorry, everybody. I'm sharing my screen now, and I forget I'm not. There you go. And where was the updates? So we had single field updates, right? And then and then we had multiple site update, but we didn't have a post for partial updates that is done via a post of a document. So Martin, what we'll have to do is do a suggestion for that here, and maybe also prototype it soon so that they can start using it in Rwanda, and then maybe we can start, we can vote for it to be incorporated into an update of the API itself once we have the Rwandan feedback. Is that okay? Martin? Oh, we cannot hear you. Classic.
Sorry. Yeah, okay to everything. I'm seeing here we have the multiple sites properties update done through a boot.
Yep.
Isn't that exactly what we need?
Oh, okay. So there's a put here, and
okay.
There's something weird with JSON formatting here going on, or something.
Yeah, I think it's just that the person who wrote this forgot to remove the escape characters. But
okay, but the idea would be that the facility object that's being submitted is just a subset of the facility
exactly.
object itself, right?
That's not
Okay.
that doesn't need to be complete.
Yeah, doesn't need to be complete. Okay, so if you don't mind putting that into the issue so that everybody who subscribed to that thread can see it and suggest appropriate verb. We won't do batch partial updates for the moment. Let's do a single facility one, and also make sure that the error codes are correctly defined, especially for example if the facility doesn't exist yet. And yeah, then I'm sure Chris and Morten will jump in and do it, but we'll need it for Rwanda pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay. That should be a pretty easy one. Is there anything else you think that we need for the Rwanda integration scenarios that we're discussing beyond the partial updates?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you and Scott if you heard of anything, because I wasn't on the last call.
No, I don't think so, actually.
All right. All right, cool. Let's keep it simple. Great. Okay, so with attention drawn, with whatever we did already with the XML and the partial updates thing, anything that is in the way of a particular effort to prototype or integrate things seems to be out of already covered by today's call. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to raise in terms of other use cases or other technical questions? No? Okay.
No, I'm sorry, we're not quite there yet. I don't have any questions. Right, we're just very excited to have a sandbox to sort of see and touch all this stuff.
So did you have any time to discuss about the schema, the XML schema for the Fred API, or because
yeah, we put it online and we had a couple of discussions, but we made sure to stop talking about it when you showed up. No, we did discuss it, and I actually uploaded the examples to here. Facility 1.x. We'll see on the links on the chat to the right. Hold on 1 second. This is the never-ending call. Sorry. There we go. So those are the two files. I just uploaded what you sent and have there. And Derek had some good questions about like what is a subset or superset of what with regards to the CSD thing. And Derek, I will make another pass this afternoon with Martin just to make sure that our min occurs and our max occurs are not clashing with regards to the CSD expectations, and that we don't have like something that you need that we're not mandating, for example. So
I think if that was the case, then that'd come out pretty quickly from the work that Carl Leitner's doing. But I hope so. We certainly can do a read. By inspection, we can see if those things are matching up. But my sense is that if he's been strict about the XSD for the manager, then something that can't be brought in, or it'll throw an exception when you try to bring in something that doesn't match.
Yep. Yeah, but it doesn't hurt to check.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. By inspection, we can see some of the obvious ones, but that XSD can get pretty deep and pretty arcane. Right? You know what? Maybe it's just me that's afraid of XSDs. You guys seem to be a little bit better at these things than me.
No. Yeah, it's just to make sure that we have like the square peg going into the square hole, you know, and it's not like
Yeah.
we're putting this star-shaped thing, and that's all. Okay, so yeah, we'll do that, Martina. We can talk about the questions offline.
Okay.
One question to you, Derek. As part of the public commenting process, during this phase, are you doing any updates to the document? So if we wanted to chase the latest understanding, have you been incorporating any feedback during these weeks, or do you wait to collect it all and then you kind of incorporate it? My question specifically being, if we go to the FTP drive and get the latest document there, is that still a representation of your best understanding of the XSD?
No, and in fact that came up on yesterday's call as well. The FTP site is a working site, so it's got multiple iterations and it's got multiple iterations of the XSD, but it actually goes through a rigorous publishing process. So the IHE publisher, the version that she posted up is a bit different from that one, and the document that that Scott put a link to in the agenda, that goes to the one that is the current one. So that's the one for public comment.
Sorry, I missed that then.
And there's a
flat me later. That's good.
Form, I think, or something for how public comments are put in, or something like that.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Yeah, we'll make sure that we're looking at the right one then. Sorry, I wasn't following the bouncing ball. Okay. So is there any other topics that anybody wants to bring up besides the XML and the partial updates? Okay. All right, then we're good. And Martin will look at the XML after the call. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.